their goals and develop confidence one mind shift habit at a time. Let's join our host, certified coach Christina.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Coach. I am your host, certified mindset and confidence coach, Christina Calloway. I help athletes, coaches, teams, and parents break through their fear and develop the confidence they need to achieve their goals, one mindset shift habit at a time. One of the biggest misconceptions people have about mindset and confidence coaches is we don't ever experience fear or a lack of confidence. We too grow through the peaks and valleys of self-doubt. In this episode, I will share with you some of the techniques that I use to help me get back on track when I do experience the dips. And these are some of the same techniques that I also share with my clients. The other day, I was listening to satellite radio and listening to one of my favorite radio personalities, and he posed a question to his listening audience. And I want to ask you the same question. What is something that you have always wanted to do, but you haven't done because of fear? Yeah. What is something that you have always wanted to do, but you haven't done because of fear? I'm going to let that sit with you for just a little bit while you ponder it. If you feel free to put some information in the chat, you can share that with me. Some of the responses that he got included getting a degree, quitting an unfulfilling job, starting a relationship. Does any of that sound familiar? How about you? How do you answer this question? Again, feel free to put your responses in the chat. So as I mentioned, this episode is going to be different. You're going to roll up your sleeves and do some work, and I hope you're ready. So before we start, I want to invite you to hit your share button and invite someone you know who can benefit from participating or listening to join us. And if they aren't able to join us live, be sure to share the video once we end. So if you're ready, let's get started. Now, it looks a little different today because I'm normally joined by a guest. There's not going to be a guest tonight. It's just going to be me and you and us doing the work on not allowing fear to hold us back any longer. And I hope you're okay with that. Sometimes it's okay to just let me hold the reins by myself. So the whole purpose of this, the goal is not to allow fear to hold us back, right? Well, first, we must identify the fear. That's the first thing that we want to do. We want to identify it. We want to see it. So when I'm working with my athletes, I'll share with you that 99.9% of the time, the skill or skills they come to me saying they're having difficult with, it has not one thing to do with what's causing their fear. Once we begin to peel the layers of the onion back, so to speak, we reveal the underlying issues of what is truly causing the fear. Now, here's something I want you to understand. The emotion of fear is a core part of our human experience. You know, our brains are wired to experience fear as a way of warning us of danger. It's true. Let's go on a quick science review. Let's blow that dust off of our science books and let's go on a quick science review. So, our experience with fear begins in the amygdala, that part of our brain that processes many of our emotions. And when the amygdala is activated due to like maybe possible danger or actual danger or a scary stimuli, so maybe you're watching a horror movie or something, or when it's artificially stimulated, it's going to elicit a fear response. And when we experience fear, our brain then reroutes the energy back to the amygdala, slowing down processing in other areas. And that is why it can be difficult for some of us to speak or make rational decisions when we are afraid. So I don't know if any of you all have ever had fear and you've kind of like lost your ability to speak or just frozen, so to speak. You're just like, I don't even know what to say. That just kind of got me all shook up there for just a minute. Well, now you know with that quick little science review that we just took on. There are 4 fear responses. 2 of them we're really familiar with: fight and flight. The fight fear response is when our brain perceives that there's danger and it might choose to try and fight off the threat. And this can be manifested like as a physical or verbal altercation, and which can be accompanied by like an intense angry feeling. We're all pretty much familiar with that fight response. Flight, our brain doesn't feel it, like if our brain does not feel that it can successfully fight the danger, it may decide to try and just escape, like triggering us to run, get out of the way. If a car were in the road, car's coming, we're going to run and get out of the way. So essentially, this response just involves us trying to get as far, far away from the danger as possible. There's 2 others that you might not be familiar with in terms of fear response. That's freezing and fawning. So freeze response is a fear response where we try to be very still or quiet until the danger passes, like I hope they can't see me. And fawning is a fear response where the brain decides to try and please whoever is triggering our fear response to prevent them from causing us harm. So these responses also show up as perfectionism, delaying making decisions, staying in unfulfilling relationships or jobs, and as an athlete, having a skill and then not being able to perform that skill all of a sudden without an explanation. So for some of the athletes that I've worked with, they'll all of a sudden they'll come into practice, or will have done the skill for a bit, and then all of a sudden it's like their body won't go. They'll refer to it as bulking, or it gets mistermed as the athlete is having a mental block. Now, based off of what I've just shared with you, you know that the body is designed the way that we were created to have one of those 4 responses. And so if their body all of a sudden they're not doing the skill, chances are they're probably in that frozen or that freezing state because the mind is communicating to the body, you no longer feel safe. Most recently, back in the Olympics, during the most recent Olympics, is everybody on the forefront of everyone's mind still. Simone Biles had what is referred to as the twisties. And it was where she was in the air and she just didn't know where she was. That is another response. And it has to do with just having so much stress and anxiety going on. She mentally could not perform the skills that she had been doing for so long. And just so that you all are aware, the twisties just isn't relegated to athletes or gymnasts or divers or skaters, but we too, or you too, non-athletes can also have something very similar to that. When we overstress and overload our minds with so much, and our bodies keep hitting that override button, like, you don't know what you're talking about. I've done this so many times. I can do this with my eyes closed. I can just keep going on automatic pilot. The mind ends up saying, no, you can't. This is not safe. This is not healthy. I'm going to shut it down. And in the mind's ability to shut things down, that is when one of the 4 fear responses is going to come up. And that is what your body does. So now that you see what fear looks like, how do you go about telling it where to go? Well, now that's going to bring us to the second topic. And that is, you identify your goals. You're going to say it. You're going to begin to coach yourself by asking yourself questions. A good question that you could ask yourself is, what would happen if you got the job? What would happen if you did not get the job? What would happen if the person you admire and wanted to ask out said yes? What would happen if they said no? What would need to happen for you to go back to school and finish your degree? If you ended the relationship you are in today, how would your life improve? It is in the asking of the questions or in the coaching of yourself that you will begin to set your goals, and you will begin to stop the storytelling. Because in our lives, when fear is in control and fear is paralyzing us from moving forward, and fear is holding us back from being all that we can be in our own lives, that is where we get to start coaching ourselves and actually redirecting this through the asking and the answering of these questions. And so I kind of want to do a little bit of a pause right here for anyone who has joined, that you can just take a little bit of time. And if there's anything in your life right now where you might be a little bit hesitant because you've created stories in your mind on the what ifs, I call it the what if stories, that if you don't, or the if stories, if you do a certain thing, all these bad things are going to happen. And start out by just writing down one of these questions, reframing, and seeing what would happen through the answer of it. It is in the reframing of the questions that you ask yourself that you are able to shift your mindset from that fear, from the fear responses to the actionable steps. And remember, it's in the actionable steps where you are no longer allowing the fear to hold you back. So again, if there's anyone who has a question that they would like to share in the chat that I can address for you personally, or that I can help you, or I can give you kind of a little coaching session, remember, this is a safe space and a judgment-free zone. Your question may help someone who is either listening now or will listen later. And hey, you get a free coaching session from me right now. So if you have a question that you want to put in the chat, go ahead now and put it in there, and then I will share it with the others who might not can see it, and we'll actually talk through your session real quick for the sake of time. But it's actually very real. There are people, like I said, when I was looking at reading the comments that some of the responses came from the radio personalities. It was on his Instagram, I believe it was. It was actually on Facebook and Instagram. And some of the responses that came back where people were saying, oh, I have wanted to for the last 6 years to go after my dream job, but fear has held me back. Or if you think about like your own personal life, I know for me, it took me the longest time to decide that I was going to go back and finish my degree. And I was using the fear of creating debt as the reason for not going back. And there was an incredible amount of time that passed when I finally decided, you know what, time's going to pass anyway. And so much time has passed now. I could have had like 3 or 4 degrees and could have had them paid off. And now look at where things are standing right now. There's a whole possibility that my loans might possibly even be forgiven. Who knows? And I was worried about the wrong thing. So that just shows you how in creating our what if stories and doing all of that, what I call catastrophic thinking, is allowing the fear to hold us back. So the next topic that I want to move into, so now that we have identified the fear, we've identified the goals, the next step is to identify your strategy. This is the actionable part where you move into action. You actually have to do something. And so what does that look like? In terms of identifying your strategy, once you've identified what your particular fear is, whether it's procrastination, whether it is fear of rejection, fear of success. There are some people who actually fear success. There is the fear of failure, whatever yours may be. You have to now ask yourself, tough question. Now it's time to put action behind your words. So what that looks like is looking at the answers to the previous questions. Here are some additional questions to coach yourself to the next level to get those action steps. What is one thing that you can do different this week to move you one step closer to where you want to be? It's not always about taking the really big steps. Like sometimes we think in our minds that we have to make these really large steps. And the first thing that comes to my mind is when people say that they want to lose weight or that they want to change jobs. They want to move from where they are and they want to end up where they want to be, and they want to do it in one quick, smooth move. And it doesn't take that. It's not going to happen. That's unrealistic. But what the one question that you can ask yourself is, what is the one thing that I can do different this week to move me one step closer to where I want to be? Another question that you can ask yourself is, who do I know within my circle of influence that has resources and or connections that can help me to get one step closer to my goal? And I say this because sometimes an excuse that is used that will help us stay or allow fear to hold us back is I don't know anyone, or I don't have the resources, or it's going to take more than what I have. And the one thing that I've come to value in terms of reaching my goals and not allowing fear to hold me back is the fact that collaboration is so very key. Not trying to do everything by myself, and networking and connecting with people within my circle of influence and allowing their connections and their resources to help me to get closer to my goals. So that's another question that you can use to coach yourself. Again, who is it that you already know within your circle of influence that has the resources and or connections to help you get one step closer to your goal? Another question that you can ask yourself to help you to eliminate the fear that's holding you back: what is the one thing that you can eliminate in your daily habits or schedule that by doing so will decrease the stress and fear you feel by 1%? Again, you are just going to do it by 1%. Again, it's not by trying to make these huge strides, because that's overwhelming. I know it's overwhelming for me, and it stresses me out trying to think about how far I have to go or how much I need to accomplish. It gets to be overwhelming. But what is the one thing that you can eliminate in your daily habits or schedule that by doing so will decrease the stress and fear you feel by just 1%? 1%, you might say, is not a lot. But if you're adding that up each day, that turns into a lot. And then another question that you can ask yourself is, what is one thing that you can add to your daily habits or schedule that will decrease the stress and anxiety or fear you feel by 1%? So in the other question, you were going to eliminate something from your daily habits that is going to decrease the stress. This way, you're going to add something that's going to decrease the stress. The whole focus is we want to eliminate stress and anxiety or fear. So there are some things that we can add to our daily habits that is going to help to decrease the stress and fear. And again, it's just by 1%. So I don't know what that might be for you. Maybe it's taking your cell phone out of the bedroom at night so that you're not tempted to wake up and start scrolling, and you can improve your sleep habit. Maybe it is taking the TV out of the room so that you have complete rest. Maybe it's just trying to improve your sleeping habit, but it's just doing it one thing at a time. You have to figure out what it is that's going to help you to get where you need to go. I see in the comment that someone, where are they? On YouTube, it says, my fear is mostly due post-COVID infection because of the fatigue and brain fog. I am trying to figure if I am going to be able to pass the life and health insurance exam. I understand where you are because I have been where you are. Having had COVID and being left with the fatigue and brain fog that I had for 6 months, and it is real. So I definitely empathize and sympathize with you on that. And what I would say and the fear is real around that, because when you're waking up with that every day, it is hard. And I will just share with you what I did. I just took each day at a time. And I did connect with, like, on my team, I finally got my doctors to understand that it wasn't in my head, that it was actually in my body. And finding the right supplements that helped me. But I listened to my body and just took it slowly. And I'm not sure when you have to take the life and health insurance exam, but yes, just exercise has actually helped me. So if you can get out and walk, just to do that, it does help to clear up the brain fog. But then the fatigue, you do have to listen to that and rest, but just do it in increments. So like, I started walking to my front door, then I would rest, and then I added walking to my mailbox. But it was a slow process, and just being patient with that until your body can can take on more. But I think it all just is going to depend on when you do have to do the test, or take the exam. Somebody else says, you just answered my question. What role does community and connection play in overcoming those fears? So I guess since I've already answered the question, then I'm glad that I did. But definitely don't try to do anything by yourself. Just make sure that we all have our own circle of influence, and we don't realize it. Just use it. Sometimes people feel guilty about asking other people for help. People are there and they want to help. Just let them, and you'll be able to reach your goals a whole lot faster when you have a community of people there helping you. We have actually come to that 30 minutes went by really fast, and we have actually come to the end of this episode. So I know that you should be able to give yourself a high five if you have just taken your first steps towards conquering the fear in your life. I want you to use this episode and replay it so that you can get those questions that I had listed to ask yourself and coach yourself through each one of those steps. And if this helped you out in any way, I want you to indicate so by putting some emojis in the chat. Make sure you celebrate yourself, because it's not easy to push past fear. Sometimes we become bedfellows with fear because it's comfortable, and it keeps us in that state of comfort that we have been in for so long, and getting beyond that is uncomfortable. That's why you've got me to partner with. That's what I do as a mindset and confidence coach. I help you to get beyond your fear. And I believe in the power of tiny habits, especially as it relates to the mindset. And that's basically what we have been talking about tonight, is overcoming mindset and making those changes. And I want to share with you, I read BJ Fogg's book, Tiny Habits, The Small Changes That Change Everything. And in the tiny habits methods that he talks about, the anchor is the existing routine that you already have, that you can attach a new habit or behavior to. And then as you do the behavior to wire in the habit, the positive emotion is a celebration. So this is the book that that I actually read, and it really is, it's a really good book. And so if you're a person who struggles with making change, or you find change to be really difficult to do, I recommend just reading that book. Even just reading it a few chapters at a time, or reading the chapter that applies to you where you are at in that particular moment, it will help you to develop just tiny habits so that you can at least shake off the fear that is holding you back. I'm glad that you all found value in this. Thank you for your comments and thank you for sharing that it did add value to you. Please make sure that you do share it with others, because judging by what I read in that radio personalities, social media, fear is holding back a lot of us, and I don't want it to do that. So I want to thank you for joining me this episode. I want to remind you to remember to follow and connect with me on all of my social media platforms, and to make sure that if you found the exercise and this episode to be helpful and you wish to continue to do the work that you started, I want you to visit my website and to book your free clarity call, and we can begin your journey. And I want you to join me here next week, same time, same channels. And I got a question for you. When life gives you lemons, what do? Well, my guest next week didn't make lemonade. She made her own salad dressing. You don't want to miss this triumphant story. Until then, remember, everything you want is on the other side of fear. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Conversations with Coach. Please be sure to follow Coach Christina on all of her social media platforms. And remember, life is only as good as your mindset.